Welcome to Being Curious podcast show with Counselling Reflections, a podcast where we dive deep into the human experience, uncovering stories of resilience and triumph. We are proudly supported by Moskin, a UK-based skincare line infused with sea moss.
Good afternoon. My name is Cornetta Williams-Walker and I'm going to be interviewing Fehintioluwa Ojelabi. Yes, have I got that right? Oh my gosh. I'm going to let you all into a secret. I was just saying to Fehintioluwa that I spoke to my partner to get the pronunciation right. So I do apologise. But what I loved what he said about your name was quite beautiful. Because what's the meaning of your first name?
Yeah, the meaning of my first name is rest your back on God. God has your back. Yes.
I just think that's so beautiful. I just think that's such a precious name.
It is.
So thank you very much for agreeing to be on Being Curious with Counselling Reflections. Fehintioluwa, I know that today is going to be a wonderful journey. What would you like us to know about you? Because why are you here on this earth doing what you are doing?
Okay, thank you so much, Cornetta. I'm so happy to be here on Counselling Reflections. It's a great opportunity for me to just express myself. And I feel like it's a long journey I took to finding myself and knowing my purpose and my true identity. And yeah, I feel like I'm here to be a light to the world because I feel like there's a lot of darkness in the world today and people struggle with trauma and struggle with so many things. There's so many issues that people experience in life. You know, life is a lovely, wonderful experience, but it can be bittersweet, especially when we don't necessarily have a manual to life. And I just feel like, I found my purpose by writing poetry. By writing poetry, I got to express myself. I felt like I was a very timid person as a child. As a kid, I was very timid and shy, and I didn't really know my place in the world. But that's the beautiful thing about life. Things fall into place naturally, right? And especially when you grow up as a Nigerian, right? And just generally as a child, really, you don't really know what your purpose is. So how do you really go about finding out about your purpose? I think you should look inward into what you're naturally adept to. And what I was naturally adept to was writing. So I started writing from the ages of 12. And I would just sit down by my balcony and just talk to God, right? And I feel like prayer and meditation and journaling, they're good strategies to healing from things you can't necessarily talk to people or talk to someone about until when you feel comfortable enough to start talking to a therapist.
It's so interesting. I'm smiling. My cheeks are kind of in awe because it's a really beautiful start to a journey. The thing about counselling in terms of practice is about being reflective, and writing is a really good way of opening up our minds and exploring our mental health. Fehintioluwa, when you was growing up, you know, why did you start writing? Why was poetry the avenue of all the gifts that you could have had? What was it about poetry and writing?
So the funny story, I did not know until I was like 25, a couple of years ago, that my grandfather was a writer.
No, really?
Yes, he wrote the history of West Africa. He was actually a professor. So I didn't know that, you know, when you're growing up in a household, you don't really talk, what did my grandparents do for a living? Like, you know, how did they make money?
Yeah.
You know? So I found that out later on in life. So it kind of clicks for me, but I think it's genetics, right? And for me, as I said, I was a shy child. I was very quiet, you know. I didn't really know myself. I wasn't really confident. But when I began to know my strengths and my capabilities, I then became confident and I then became expressive. But for me, writing was really a way to express my hidden thoughts. My hidden thoughts about life, about God, about the universe, about friendships, about love, about heartbreak. And I actually have a book called Overcoming Battles of the Mind.
Overcoming Battles of the Mind. So what is this book about? And why did you write the book, and who did you write the book for?
So I wrote it for everyone who has been through a challenge in their life, an obstacle that was hard to overcome, right? And for me personally, if you can win the battle in your mind, you can win the battle in the physical realm, right? I'm huge on spirituality, right? I'm huge on your belief in yourself, your belief in a higher power, the supreme Godhead, God. I'm a Christian, and I really believe in Jesus Christ. So, so when you can overcome challenges, whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it's rape or assault or bullying in school, right? I feel like it really takes a person that has a strong mindset and has resilience. One of the things that people don't realize with depression or anxiety is that people that have depression or anxiety, they kind of look down on themselves. They don't really have a healthy mindset, right? And it is what you cultivate in your mind, it is what you feed your mind that would help you, right? That would help you to overcome challenges. So I think people that have depression and anxiety need to really reflect on what they think about,
So because I want to go back a bit, because you've gone from being a writer, reflector, being able to think about things through writing, and then you've now gone on to write in the realms of mental health and therapy, and thinking about kind of, I suppose, positive mindset. But how did you get from one space to the other? Because yes, we do have people who write, who are therapists, but we generally have writers who think, or philosophers, so how did you get from this space as a writer and then into therapy and thinking about mental health and also thinking about spirituality? And how does it work in your environment in which you are working in?
Wow, those are so many questions.
There are so many questions.
I'll try my best to answer everything, but yes. Okay, so like I said, the journey started from writing. Then I now got certified as a therapist in 2021. So I've started this journey as a therapist since 2021, and I published the book ending of 2020 during COVID-19. And I think that period was a hard period for so many people, and people were stuck at home, and they had to come to terms with their feelings, with their emotions. They had to find ways of regulating their emotions, as opposed to just always going out, always being busy and being always preoccupied and not having time to sit with their emotions and with their feelings. So
how did you manage? Sorry to disturb you, but how did you manage during COVID? Because by the end of COVID, you're now certified to work in mental health. So what was you thinking? How did COVID-19 impact the way that you thought at the time?
I felt like COVID-19 was perfect for me because, and I know this is an unconventional thought, but it was a good time for me to just pace myself, to sit back and actually work on myself, to work on, okay, how do I actually want to achieve, to gain clarity, right? To gain peace of mind. And I think that's what a lot of people in today's world actually lack, is peace of mind and clarity. And once you begin to have clarity of purpose and clarity of your true identity, you begin to operate differently. You begin to operate on a higher frequency, right? So for me, it was just a good time for me to get myself together, work on myself, and figure out what I want to do with all the talents and gifts that God had given me, the skills, the active listening skills, the ability to help other people, right? Just figuring out, okay, this is actually what I want to do as my career path, right? How can I go about helping other people through my research, through my poetry, right? And I feel like I found that poetry is very healing for some people. Lots of people resonated with my poetry, right? And when I found out that there's a bit of relatability in trauma, right? That I'm not alone, right? And other people should feel like they can talk to someone, they can be like a form of unified, emotions, right? So yeah, I just figured that, you know what, I'm gonna put my book out there, and I'm going to attract my tribe, because a huge part of trauma is and what thrives in trauma is silence. People don't feel comfortable talking about things they've been through. People don't feel comfortable speaking to a therapist. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, right?
I think it's interesting because you're based in Nigeria at this moment in time. And I think I'm based here in the UK. And I think people can name it here in the UK, but tend not to do anything about it until much later. And I think you're right. I think there are people that aren't able to kind of work with trauma, or the complexities or the feelings around trauma. So for you then, when you see the work that you're interested in and you're thinking the thoughts around your practice, are you able to kind of work in the way that you want to, in terms of practice? Because I'm here in the UK and we have kind of like regulations and practice on how we work. But at the same time, people are attracted to us as individuals. So your tribe comes to you. So people come to me to talk about trauma, talk about relationships, and talk about growth, because that's what the energy that I put out there. That's what I talk about.
Yeah.
For you, who is your tribe?
I feel like your tribe is anyone that you can connect with and relate with on a personal level. Someone that I can understand things that you've been through, because there's a bit of relatability in my story, that you feel like you resonate with my story, or you feel like you resonate with the fact that I'm able to overcome certain things, and I can help you to overcome those things just by the strategies that have worked for me. And I'm a firm believer in affirmations, the power of affirmations, the power of positive thinking, the power of what you say about yourself, what you think about yourself, the power of moving from a low self-esteem to a high self-esteem, the power of having a strong belief in yourself, right? So the energy that I resonate out is the energy of strength, of power, of faith, of love, of a sound mind, right?
So where does this come? I am being curious here, because we started around about where you were 12. So I'm sure your story started before then. How did you get to this kind of thinking and thought process? Was you born? Is it the nature in you? Is it the conditioning, the social constructs around kind of faith and religion? Or have you got a relative who was influential in your thinking that encouraged you, or a teacher?
Okay. So I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just going to be very point blank and honest. That's a very amazing question, because my father is a pastor and my mother is also a pastor. So they greatly positively influenced me. My father sees himself as an eagle, and he operates as a military person in a good way. And my mom has overcome so many challenges, but I would say that she's a prayer warrior, and she's also a writer. My dad is also a writer. So I saw success in them being writers, and because of their belief in God, I was able to quickly latch on to having a personal relationship with God at a very young age. God has really worked for me. And when I say worked for me, I mean that my belief in God has really helped me to overcome certain challenges. Just the fact that there is hope, what Jesus Christ brings to the world is hope, right? Hope that you can be healed from any disease, hope that you can be delivered from any form of manipulation or stress. From, John 16:33 says, do not be overwhelmed by the challenges of the world. Jesus Christ has already come and he has already overcome the world. So
it is really beautiful, and I'm not a Christian, so to listen to you, and this is not necessarily about faith, but to listen to you, it has a sense of direction, and to have a family that comes from who are Christians or people who are Muslim, I think is really a beautiful foundation to have.
Yeah.
But we live in a secular society, and there are people around the world that have different ideas that doesn't kind of attune to being a Christian or to be Muslim or to be a Buddhist or to be Sikh. And I suppose, how does your practice allow them to feel connected with you on a deep level? I can see why people are attracted to your energy and the values, but some things that we work with are not related to the ideas that we hold, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you work in that space?
So how I work in that space is I'm not judgmental, and I'm not going to tell you to believe in Jesus Christ. All I'm going to ask you to do is just have faith. Have faith in the world, have faith in humanity, have faith in love, have faith in God's love for you.
And that's quite difficult. It's interesting you saying that, because that can be quite difficult when you experience trauma. If you've got PTSD or complex PTSD or that you're depressed, that is the energy that you might not have.
Yeah.
And that you have to lean into your therapist to get. So how do you kind of help someone who's really struggling work through that?
Yes, for me personally, I feel like depression is a dark abyss, right? It's like a dark hole where you can't really find sense of things in the world, right? And because I've personally experienced depression, I can understand that, because I would understand anyone that tells me, oh, they don't believe in God. Why would this happen to me? Why would God allow me to be raped, right? Why would God allow me to be bullied? Why would God allow the devil to trample on my life, right? But the beautiful thing about the world, or God, rather, let me say God. The beautiful thing about God is God will not turn away anyone that comes to him and asks them, oh, just save me. If you're on the deathbed right now, and you just say a prayer, right? You just say a prayer and say, God, I don't really believe in you right now. Like, what should I do? Like, I feel lost. I feel alone. I've been through so much. If you just say a short prayer, don't say much. Just talk to God.
But I think that's easy to say when you have faith and you had that kind of guidance to have that. But the clients that I see who are struggling, and in some ways, like AA is really good for that. Alcohol Anonymous, in terms of the 12 steps. Most organizations that deal with mental health have different philosophies in working with that.
Yeah.
So my clients are not going to kneel down and think about God, because I live in the UK. I live in a secular world. And so they're not, and whilst there's lots of beautiful churches around, not many people go to them in terms of, so they're not going to lean into that as an idea. Maybe that's easier in Nigeria. And I think that when I listen to friends and family, there is a bigger community of faith in Africa than there probably is in the West.
Okay.
In terms of your practice, does it make sense then? Most of the language and the references that you use, are they more likely to be drawn to kind of a faith-based approach in healing because of the location and geographic understanding and the legacy within the country?
Okay. To be honest with you, I've had Muslim clients, but
Yeah.
like I don't typically use a one-way approach to healing because there's not just one direction to a destination, right? So there are many various strategies, right? There are holistic strategies to wellness and to healing and to a balanced mental state of mind, right? And those strategies I use can span from art therapy. Art can be very therapeutic to someone. You can paint, you can draw, whatever medium of art you want to use to express yourself. If you want to make a song, if you want to sing, please go ahead and do so. If it's going to be comforting to your heart and comforting to your mind and comforting to your spirit.
I am so happy that you're saying this, because I think people feel that therapy is about a clinical space, this kind of white wall with one picture and a lamp and two sofas, and you sit down and talk. And when I think about all the amazing work that I've done over the years that have been therapeutic based, it has been in art, it has been in drama, it has been in drumming, it's been all the creative things, to be able to talk to the soul, to be able to connect with the trauma that they experiences.
Yeah.
How did you get there? Because I noticed that you're a dancer, you're an author, you're a life coach, and you're a vlogger. So how did you get to use your creativity, and where did you start, first in your journey of all these amazing things that you do?
Okay. First of all, I love nature. I love spending time with animals. If I see a dog walking by, just know I'm going to say hi to that dog. I just love animals. I love horses. And there's something called equine therapy that I love to use as a strategy, right? So I used to be a dancer in school. So it was one of my, I feel like joining a community, whether it's a dance club or joining the gym, having a regular routine and a regular practice, whether it's meditation or journaling or art therapy or sound therapy or aromatherapy. If you come home from work every day and you light a candle and you light some incense and you put on your humidifier and you put on some lights, there's a high chance that you forget your traumas.
Yeah, absolutely. You're good to go. So there's something about creating special environments, isn't it? And I think people really, I don't know. I just think people don't necessarily realise that some of the things that we say as therapists, as part of the healing journey, is quite simple, and some of it that people already know already, but forget to do when they're struggling. It almost goes out the window. You like horse riding, but you don't do it when you're depressed. Like the cat or the dog loves you, but you go far away from them because when you're kind of depressed. But I think you're right. I think, smells are a really good way of connecting with us.
Yes. And I feel like self-care, once you start to take care of your body and take care of your mind and take care of your spirit, go and have a bubble bath, right? Throw in some bath bombs in there, right? Take care of yourself, paint your nails, go and do your nails, go do your hair, get a pedicure, take care of yourself, right? And enjoy life. Find the little joys and little blessings in life. Drink a coffee in the morning. If a coffee makes you happy, a hot chocolate and some muffins, please take it every morning.
That sounds like a joyful life. I think I need to do this myself. I'm curious actually about what is going on for you in terms of your practice. Like, what are Nigerians worrying about at the moment? What's coming up? What are you seeing in the world? Because I'm sure that you're borderless. I'm sure, yes, you might be here in Lagos, but I'm sure you're across the world as well.
Okay, so I would say a lot of things are going on all over the world, right? There's a lot of injustice in the world. There's a lot of imbalance in the system, right? And there's a lot of poverty and lack going on in the world, and people are people have lost their jobs. People are trying to change their jobs. People are trying to accomplish more. People are worried about their children being safe. People are worried about their children not getting kidnapped or being sexually molested, right? In Nigeria, I would say right now, the government is our biggest issue in terms of the fuel prices always constantly going up. The standard of living is very low. But I will say that there is hope, and people are just making ends meet how best they can. People are finding the little joys in life to just keep them going. And yes.
I've heard, from lots of different kind of conversations, people are really struggling, and I can imagine that it's exacerbated by those who are in society who are maybe doing manual jobs or inconsistent employment, and there's no guarantee for regular employment. I can also imagine that if you've got a big family or a small family, trying to get by can be really difficult. And then it's exacerbated by maybe domestic abuse and violence towards women. As in terms of the mental health, what are the mental health issues that are you witnessing in practice? What are the common things that come up in your work?
I would say narcissistic abuse. I would say
By whom?
I can't really say because the code of confidentiality.
No, I didn't mean for you to tell me, because that would be inappropriate. What I meant by whom, is it their father? Is it a partner? Is it in the workplace?
Yeah, definitely. All those things in the workplace, in their relationships with their parents, or in a relationship with their partner, right? And I don't usually recommend them they have to figure out an exit strategy first, because, they have to think about their kids, and they have to think about providing for their children, right? So they can't just leave their jobs like that, right? Always think of an exit plan or exit strategy first. You can't just make impulsive decisions.
Why not? Is it because you specialize in narcissism, so therefore you see more of that? Because I specialize in trauma and attachment, so I see a lot more couples or individuals or young people in this kind of lens. Is it that actually something's happening within the space of work and you're noticing it more, that narcissism is a problem? Although when you kind of think about it, it's only a small minority people who are narcissistic. So what's kind of going on here?
Well, there are people that have traits of narcissism, and there are people that have the disorder, and the spectrum is really broad. So I can't really say, but I also have clients that have depression or anxiety disorder or bipolar disorder, or they're just emotionally stressed, and they just need to find themselves again and find joy in things they love to do and just do those things. But I also specialize in addiction recovery, and what I use smart recovery tools to empower them. I use the disarm tool, I use the deeds tool, I use, the urge log, I use various other tools, right? But I think it's important to realize that there are healthy habits to replace with negative habits, right?
So for you as an addiction counselor or therapist, that is part of my own training as well. What are the main issues in terms of society, issues around addiction or alcohol? Because I find it quite interesting, like within the Caribbean and with my fellow brothers and sisters who may be drinking in Africa, drink in a very different way from probably British population. And so telling my fellow kind of Caribbeans that actually too much rum is not good for you can be quite hard work if you're an addiction therapist. Because there's a cultural idea around Guinness. I used to have to argue with with people about Guinness. Yes, Guinness is lovely, but it's not just about iron. It's not good for you generally if you drink too much. So what are you seeing in practice?
I think people don't realize that alcohol is a drug, right? It kind of affects your brain activity, right? People don't realize that alcohol is also a drug. Cigarettes are also a drug, right? And they have a negative impact not only on your body but also on your brain, and people don't realize that, and they just run to it when they're trying to de-stress. They just run to alcohol and they get to the end of the bottle and they're still having those same challenges and same problems, right? You can't find the answers at the end of your bottle. And
what resources do you find? Because I can imagine here we are really struggling here. I worked in organisations where to get treatment for the worst case scenarios is really difficult. They cost thousands of pounds to go and have in-treatment support. And when you then think about the addiction cycle, it takes a long time for some people to kind of recover. What treatment support do individuals have in Nigeria? And for you then working with individuals, are you seeing the extreme end of things, or are you seeing people, I assume, who can afford you to be able to kind of work on their alcohol issues?
So I do pro bono work for people that can't afford me, just because I understand. I'm a bit understanding of situation, but not everybody. Those that can't afford do pay. But I am about to start an AA group, and I'm also going to start a smart recovery group as well, so that people can just come as a group and just talk about their issues. We can talk about AA, right? The 12-step program, right? And I think that would be a good avenue. So if they want
it'd be a wonderful avenue, honestly.
Yeah. So if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram, THM Therapy by Fifi. You can just message me about when we're going to start. Yeah, so we're going to start doing AA.
What made you decide to start a recovery group? Because I don't know if there's many. I don't know what practice happens in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there many groups, in Lagos, or will you be one of the first groups?
I would actually be one of the first groups, but I would say I've read the book, I've read this 12-step program, and the daily meditations. When I read them, and people have reached out to me on Instagram, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm actually struggling with addiction, right? And I need help, and I don't know what to do." So that's why I'm going to start this group, so that people can.
And are you going to be doing an in-person group or online group?
I think I would do a collaborative effort so that anyone anywhere at the world can just tune in and just listen, and it will really help them.
I absolutely think it's a wonderful idea, because I think there's not enough support and resourcing in the world, and there are more human beings than there are therapists. And then when you then think about the addiction side of things and the specialism within addiction, whether it's alcohol, whether it's Narcotics Anonymous, or whether it's a sex addiction, and that's one of my specialist areas, there are not many practitioners again. So to offer a safe space where people can talk about their problems. I think what's really beautiful about the 12-step model, people get support by a sponsor, that when you do the steps, and people in recovery could be going to AA for 18 years and have the support of the community. Because sometimes the individuals that I see in practice, they think, oh my gosh, I haven't got anyone I can talk to who really gets me, and I don't suffer. I might suffer from other things, but I don't suffer from that particular addiction as it were. So I think it's a wonderful thing that you're offering. Why now? Why do you think it's needed now in Nigeria? Smart or AA?
I feel like there's no perfect time than now, and so that things don't escalate to suicide or to you don't have to wait till when things get really, really bad to find healing or to find a support system or to find a community of people that can resonate and you can get a chance to just express yourself, right? So yes, I feel like there's no better time than now.
And then as a practitioner kind of thinking about these things, what is the government doing then? How does the government look at mental health? Like, I know here in the UK, we're really struggling in terms of the NHS. There's a really great need of support, and yet people are on long waiting lists. What is it like in Nigeria for individuals who have mental health?
As of now, I'm not currently sure that there's anything being done in regards to mental health. Just that they recently enforced a law that if you try to commit suicide and you don't succeed, you're going to jail. That's the only thing I know. But I think
say it again. Sorry. Hello. So you are struggling with your mental health. So we know that, men do this quite silently. High numbers of men and women struggle with suicide ideation.
Yeah.
So if you attempt, the government's answer is, I need to put you in jail because
you didn't complete the job.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess they'll catch on immediately. I think that's one thing I know about Nigerian government. Once they see like there's a buzz going around, and so they'll come on board eventually. But as of now, no resources, no funds have been placed, no systems, no structures have been in place to help people suffering from mental health.
Yeah, and I was listening to a vlog. Is it a podcast? I need to be more technical. I think it was on YouTube, and they were talking about the changes in the Mental Health Act, from the Lunacy Act to the new current Mental Health Act. And to me, when I was listening to the conversation, it felt really helpful. It felt like actually there was an opportunity to be kind of educated. But there seems to me that there's a lot of education is required around suicide ideation, self-harming, around addiction, around maybe, domestic violence. I wonder if there's a lot more education via the institutions that are providing services or for the general public.
Okay. Definitely.
What's your thoughts?
My thoughts are definitely the constitution needs to be relooked at and it needs to be revamped in terms of just generally speaking, right? And in terms of like genital mutilation or the sexual acts, right? Because in the northern parts of Nigeria, men are allowed to marry 12-year-old girls. And in some states, and Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world, the marriage, right? And I think it affects them negatively. I won't even begin to start to understand what those girls go through if you're being married off like 12 years old or 8 years old, and there needs to be...
Why is there a disparity when we kind of know in terms of, if you think about, there's just lots of things why, young girls having the choice, you'd want them to delay it longer. Yeah. And if you think about the transitioning in terms of adolescence, that pubescence bit, are you ready to take on the responsibilities of a marriage life? Can you make those choices? So why is it that one part of the country is able to kind of have young girls married at a younger age, and yet the other side of the country do something differently? What is the difference between the north, south or east of Nigeria?
I think it's the education and the fact that it's not being desensitized and there's no awareness for these young girls and for the men as well. I feel like it's a psychological issue that needs to be discussed, but actually is pushed under the rug.
So it's not discussed in a, it's, what makes it difficult to discuss, here, I think in the UK, you was able to, with your family consent, I think, get married at 16. Any child below the age of 12, we would describe that as statutory rape.
Yes.
And we talk about power and control. We recognize here in the UK that if there's a power differentiation between someone who's an adult and someone's a child, that actually does that young person have the right to be able to say yes to something when there's the power and the age difference. We're not necessarily the best at looking after girls' rights or women's rights here in the UK. So 6% of rape gets prosecuted in the UK. 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused in the UK. 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 3 girls sexually abused. So we have the data, and so in some ways that information is out there, and we have practices around protecting young people in terms of education. What happens in Nigeria then? Is it a patchwork of ideas around sex and sexuality, around mental health practices? So I'm coming from a mental health lens, What is it about? What's going on? Why is it like this?
So I think it's like this because of the oppression, right? The abuse of power. And that really happens across board, right? It doesn't matter the class, it doesn't matter the level, the status of the person, it happens across board. And those statistics that you mentioned are very, very alarming, but I can imagine they're 10 times worse in Africa, especially Nigeria, because the age of consent is 8 or 12. I'm not sure what number it is, but that means that if they get married at that age, it can't even be seen as a statutory rape because the age of consent is already 8 or 12, right? So in those cases, there's nothing that can be done because that's how the constitution is, right? And even in most cases where somebody is raped and they're of age, let's say they're 18, they're 21 and they're raped and they go to the police station, unless you're a person of power, the police are not going to answer you. They're going to ask you for money before they attend to your case, and they'll say there's no...
Why is that? Why, given that, so my partner is a barrister, he often tells me that there are many women in power now that are in the legal system. He talks about the disparity of government and some of the things that are not working in terms of government policies. But what is it about looking after women and girls' rights, fundamentally, and fundamentally society's rights, that the country struggles to deal with? And I'm trying to because I don't think anyone intentionally wakes up and says, you know what, I'm not going to do my job. But what is it about the environment in which we are living in or working in that makes it that someone who's come to the police station and said, this is what's happened to me, and someone turns around and says, well, actually, I won't do anything about it unless you give me some money?
So I think Nigerians are not very much a respecter of human rights, right? The government is not a respecter of human rights, and the disparity is very, very alarming. And in terms of, what we can do about that, I think there are a lot of NGOs that have proven themselves and they've risen to the occasion, right? The Stand to End Rape initiative. There's a Mirable Center. There's one in Ikeja. There's one in Lekki. So if you have been sexually assaulted by your father or by someone, you can go to them for help, and they will help with the law case. They will help with everything, bringing the person to justice, right? So I'm so grateful for those initiatives that have brought themselves to light and are doing the work that the government is supposed to be doing. So I think there's hope, even though the police can't do anything about it and the justice system can't necessarily do anything about it because they're not, Nigerians are not really aware of their human rights, aware of their women's rights, their They're right.
Can I just ask then, and I know this is kind of a cheeky question in some ways, I'm thinking, yeah, the most powerful organisation in maybe Nigeria are the churches. Lots of people go to church, spend time, connecting with God, connecting with the community, doing work that often governments and other agencies or councils don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that they struggle to deal with those cases in that way, or is it that they are struggling, but we just don't know about it? The general public, don't know about it, or can churches be political? Is it too political to kind of look at women and girls' rights and tackle the government and say, and not tackle the government because that would be wrong, hold people in power to account so that they can do more for vulnerable people in society?
I don't know. It's a very tricky subject. Well, but I would say this. Some churches are empowered and some are conniving with the government, right? So the ones that are empowered, they are doing something about it. Like I know Pastor Tony Rapo has saved so many sexual abuse kids, has rehabilitated a lot of addicted kids, right? And those kids are now, they've gone on to have better lives, right? And some churches, like I know, they have programs in place for people that have gone through either sexual abuse or going through addiction. But other churches, they're either not empowered enough, whether it's financially, and there are others that actually cause this harm, right? There's some pastors that have assaulted girls, right? And they're not held accountable, right?
It's a complicated space, isn't it? Between man, woman, and God and the earth, because I think there's one thing to kind of know. There's no religions in the world that I'm aware of that doesn't want the best for everyone that they serve, you know? Yet there is something about maybe human beings, due to lots of reasons why, I see clients that are much complex. I've worked with perpetrators of domestic abuse. I've worked in prisons. So I know that people don't just go there by chance. Things have happened to them. I look at it in the lens of addiction. I look at it in the lens of attachment and childhood traumas. So that's how I kind of make sense of it all. But I wonder then, how do we organize ourselves so we can do more for humanity and society?
I think the best way for us to do more for humanity is to be empathic, right? And empathy is something that you need to have as a human being to be emotionally intelligent. I think when you are emotionally intelligent, you really start to place yourself in other people's shoes so you don't inflict harm on other people, right? If you don't want harm to be done to you or your daughter or your son, don't inflict harm on someone else's son or daughter or someone else, period. So I think having empathy is what will really take humanity a long way.
I think I am so privileged to speak to you today, because I think you offer insights on lots of levels. I think it's really beautiful to hear you talk about your faith and how you rise. And actually, I think whether your parents were a pastor or not, I think they've done a wonderful job on you. And the fact that you all write, I think that's really, like, you wasn't aware of your granddad, but I think, the apple doesn't fall far from its tree. So, you had the space to do it. But also in the space of well-being and health, I think it's really wonderful, the way that you kind of make me feel comfortable to talk to you, So I can imagine if I'm feeling comfortable talking to you now, oh my gosh, what will your clients feel like? And also I take my hat off to you. I'm in the system where I have lots of resourcing. I'm able to have a private practice. I'm able to kind of get the resources that I need for my clients. I can imagine, that you are a special person, because I don't know if many of you think like you live in Nigeria or live in Lagos, much less. And I'm wondering, what would you like us to know about you, or what do you want to make sure we understand about you before we go?
I guess that I'm human and nobody's perfect, and there's nothing you can't share with me that I wouldn't understand. And I just want anyone that's listening to this, to know that there's hope, and there's hope for the world to be a better place, right? Yes. And yeah, maybe you should buy my book, Overcoming.
I know. Where can we find your book? You're asking us to buy your book. And what's it called again?
Overcoming Battles of the Mind. If you just type it and type my name, Fehintioluwa Ojelabi, seller, you should be able to buy it. Or you can just email me or reach out to me on Instagram, Fehintioluwa Ojelabi on Instagram, or THM Therapy by Fifi, and I'll send you a copy of my book.
And if we're in Lagos, how do we get hold of you again if we want therapy? Is your practice online, or do you do in person?
Online, but I do hold wellness workshops. I hold wellness workshops at the Happiness Center once every month. Sorry, guys, it's just for ladies.
Oh my gosh! So where will the men go? And so the ladies with these happiness workshops, what goes on there?
So we have something called the confession box, where we just express different things, right? And there's a bit of a confidentiality clause. Don't worry, what is said at that wellness workshop stays at that wellness.
Oh my gosh! So we can't even ask you about that before we go.
So we do dance, we do stress relief techniques, and yeah, we do yoga as well. So yes, and there's drinks and refreshments, non-alcoholic drinks. Tea,
no alcohol.
Teas and snacks.
And in terms of like your online practice, are you able to practice around the world? Are there parameters? Because our audience are from everywhere. So can you practice, can they contact you as well using the details that you
anywhere
provided?
in the world, Jamaica, Australia, United Kingdom, USA, Germany. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Fehintioluwa Ojelabi, or Instagram, THM Therapy by Fifi, or via email, fehintioluwaojelabi@gmail.com.
Fehintioluwa Ojelabi, I am privileged to sit down with you today.
Oh, thank you to you. You're such a lovely person. It's such an honor to have spoken to you today and to be on this podcast on the Counselling.
Thank you. And I know you're going on to do greater and better things. And I think Lagos, Nigeria, they're lucky to have you in the realms thinking the way that you think. And if there's anything that I can do in relation to kind of supporting you, then I am very much happy to be your service as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Cornetta.
You are welcome.